Okay, right, so I think what I'm going to do, I had to change, so I decided to focus on that, on the foundations, just looking, there's newer people and things like that. For those of you who've been here longer, if you want to check out and leave now, I don't mind, because I'm going to overrun, because I want to explain for those who want it to the beginners some of the body mechanics, basically Yi Jing mechanics. But if you've been here years, you already know that. Feel free to, I won't feel insulted if you switch off and disappear, please, feel free, because you're more than familiar with it. But I just want to make sure everyone's caught up with regards to how the body moves, because just looking around, as some of the newer people, there's a couple of things to work on, to change. And may as well be helpful, right? To try to look at those. So if you want to check out, feel free, honestly. You've heard this a million times, I'm sure. So for those who are not so familiar with this way of working, I'll help you understand a little bit, or try my best to help you understand how it works, right? Because and again, like, don't take this as a personal, I've amazing about people I give corrections to, and then I get an email like a week later saying, "Oh, do you hate me?" or something. It's like, no, not at all. I just try to help you. I'm not attacking you as a person, just some things you can kind of work on. So just give you a hand. Don't worry. Don't be sensitive. I'm just a grumpy Englishman. I think everyone's sensitive at the moment, aren't they? A couple of years beating people up. If it made everyone a bit sensitive, is that what happened? You've all got battered around. God, life's been a bit of a bitch for a couple of years, isn't it? So, essentially, you need, what a lot of you need to work on the newer ones is that on the board? That's on the board. Activation. Activation. Your bodies are asleep, or the chi is asleep, essentially. So let's do a little bit of a distinction between maybe what we might call medical Qigong, and let's call this alchemical Qigong. There's a bit of a distinction. So medical Qigong has obviously become the most widespread system. That's all well and good, that's cool, it's good for people, but largely it works on almost entirely yin mechanics, with the exception of Dao Yins perhaps. It's almost entirely yin. So what it's trying to do is release and lengthen and relax the nerves as much as anything. If you look at all the kind of movements people do, I don't think they have as much correlation to the organs as people think necessarily. To me, it's more about releasing the nerves and relaxing the body. So primarily what they do is try to line up the bones, and then they just try to release the tension around the joints and around the nerves. The result of this is there is an increase of blood flow and lymph flow and nervous system energy, so that everything pulls you out of fight or flight and kind of heals the body, because as you de-stress, it'll chill you out. Like, perfect, great. So then a lot of the flowing movements that they do are about this. And then on top of that, they'll combine this with deep regulated breathing, because as we know, that relaxes you and chills you out. The result of this is you feel like you have more energy, because obviously if you relax and come out of fight or flight, you will feel like you are very, very energized. So the result of this is medical Qigong can take people to a state of relaxation and put the body in a state where it's going to fix itself. But it's not going to be enough to start doing some of the sort of deeper alchemical work. It doesn't matter how much medical Qigong has adopted alchemical terminology, because it has often these days, it's not going to be strong enough, because you don't have enough juice in the can. There's not enough moving around the system. It needs to get going, right? So in order to get going, we have to make the body conduct. It has to conduct. That phrase that I keep saying, like a drum skin, like a drum skin. That's the phrase you want to get like drilled into what that feels like. Go away and bang a drum. Get your drum circle on the go, or whatever it is, and feel like when you hit it, it vibrates and it shakes, right? That's what you want with your body. That's what they're implying. So what I was saying about there being two sets of, what should we call it? Muscles, tissue, I don't know, anything that's not bone, okay, all of the fleshy bits. You must learn to separate the two from each other. That's what we're doing. We're separating the two from each other. So that what I call the outside muscles, which is really the kind of big ones you use for mobilization. So whenever you're lifting something, or you're turning, or you're moving your head, or whatever, those muscles that contract to create leverage inside your body, yeah, the ones you move with, those ones, we'll call them the mobilizers, just for simplicity's sake, which I'm in America, so that should be a Z, right? Not an S. I get confused. I don't know. The mobilizers must relax and I can't spell either. Fucking hell. Random letters. Lengthen. They must relax and lengthen. Okay. So the phrase is they hang from the bones. They hang from the bones. So we establish the frame of the skeleton, and then we hang the muscles off the bones. So the mobilizers must go and just relax. But then you have another set of muscles, tissues, or whatever, which for simplicity's sake, we will call stabilizers, even though probably there's a little bit of a crossover of their function, right? But they must stretch and engage. They must stretch and engage, yeah? When you sink and drop, and these two separate from each other, what you will get is, I'm going to write this big, discomfort. Discomfort. Sometimes incredible amounts of discomfort. It's quite surprising. But that discomfort is not in your knees, not in your hips, like in the bones. You don't want that. That will be something going on with the alignments. But it will be all the way through the soft tissues of the body. I think anyone who's trained with me or one of the other teachers in Lotus and Gong, obviously, will notice that it's quite uncomfortable, yeah? I can see Joyce there. I'm sure she puts people through pain. There's Lydia. She teaches. She probably hurts people. One of your students is on there doing this, Joyce, so I presume you're nearly killing the poor guy. But yeah, there's a fair amount of discomfort, right? Because you've got to separate those muscles from each other. They have to pull apart, so it's going to hurt a little bit. It's going to be like friction or heat. Now, unfortunately, there's an injustice that if you've had, it's not unfortunate, it's your own fault, if you've had a lot of years with a bad posture, maybe driving, computers, or whatever, or an injury even that wasn't, something you did, everything's going to bind. We know this, right? It grips and it binds. So those are the areas that are going to be uncomfortable because all that binding has to unravel and they have to slide against each other. So most people, when they first stand, or they first stand in this particular position that we put you in, they don't stabilize with the stabilizers. They stabilize with the mobilizers. And that's a part of the problem. They stabilize the body with the mobilizers. And that's not what they're designed to do. And this is just from what I can see in your body. So essentially, when that happens, you hurt and you ache and your muscles get really tired really, really quickly. And there's a lactic acid buildup, your calves, your lower back. It just hurts, right? Because you're stabilizing with the wrong muscles. And the reason you're stabilizing with the wrong muscles is because they're not separate and they don't slide. So when your stabilizers grip in, so do your mobilizers. So they function together. Does that make sense? Do you get what I mean? Conceptually, yeah, they kind of grip. So I have to get them to slide off of each other. So the only way I can do that is I relax and hang the large muscles from the bone, but then I elasticate and pull the rest of the body. And then gradually they will separate from each other. And then you will find when you stand still, only your stabilizers will function. And when you move, primarily your mobilizers will function. And then everything will be a lot more comfortable because your body's not fighting itself. It's not fighting itself anymore. But you won't be able to do that. Let's get some people on the screen. Let's get some new people. Do you understand all that? Just checking through. I really want to make sure the beginners get it. And okay, maybe it's not 100%. There's some stabilizing function in the mobilizers, you know what I mean? But it's as a concept, this is what you're trying to do. So once you've been through that stage and they've separated from each other, then your body is no longer fighting itself when it stands or fighting itself when it moves. So you will find that generally your muscular fatigue drops when you're doing anything. So whether you're doing something like, I don't know, Tai Chi or skiing, doesn't really make any difference. Whenever you're moving your body, you will find that your body it's just efficiency goes up. And when you stand, you can stand for as long as you want. So you know all these things where people say true standing should be for about 10 minutes or something like this, like real standing practice should hurt after 20 minutes or something. Should hurt after about 2 minutes, actually, if you're at the beginning. But once those things have separated from each other, it shouldn't hurt for about 4 or 5 hours, like honestly. And it doesn't matter what posture you're in. Once the stabilizers and the mobilizers are separate, your mental anguish is going to be a lot more of a struggle than your physical anguish, trust me, because your body will be able to stabilize properly, because we need to separate them. But a lot of the problem is people don't go through the dividing phase. So, as an example, a question I get asked often is, why don't you teach... Hang on a minute, I'm going to adjust this. I feel like I'm kind of hiding down off the bottom of the screen for me or something. There we go. That's better. Move that. So, question I get asked often, for example, is why don't you do Jamzhong, yeah? From the beginning. The reason is beginners shouldn't do Jamzhong. They shouldn't do it, in my opinion. They shouldn't do Jamzhong because your stabilizer and your mobilizers aren't separate yet. So as soon as you go into that kind of posture, all you're going to do is bind them up together more. Now, curiously, people will say, oh, well, I'm getting better because I don't feel the weight in my arms anymore. But the reason you don't feel your weight in your arms is because probably you've caused your mobilizers to contract to such an extent that they're supporting the stabilizer, so your arms feel light. But in actual fact, they're not separate from each other yet. Do you understand that? They're not separate. And you don't understand, Barbara. Did you say, was that no? Basically, when people do postures like this, or these kind of rounder postures or whatever, if they haven't yet separated the two types of muscle, then when your mobilizers are engaged, at first they'll get tired and they'll shake your arms. And then they'll engage and they'll grip to support the stabilizers. So they're helping you hold the arms up. The result of this is you can't separate the two from each other. So you'll get very, very immobile shoulders and chest and scapula, which is why the stiffest people I meet are the ones who've done lots of Jamzhong in the Qigong, right? Until they've separated those muscles, they must slide apart at the beginning. So this is why the postures that we have at the beginning are quite linear. They're quite straight, right? They're lined up in a way that is natural for the body so that they can separate from each other. This then brings you to the stage where I drew here, not this bit, where the outside, the mobilizers, relax, and the inside, the stabilizers, and then the connective tissue afterwards, the huang and everything squishy, the wetsuit, starts to tie together into one elasticated line through your body. Once it's elasticated, it will mobilize the qi. Mobilize the qi. Yeah, that's important. Once the qi mobilizes, body is active. So the force for mobilizing the qi, can you see this corner? Yeah. So it will sound odd, but this bit, this structure, the outside is primarily built from the elastication and stretch of the body. That's primarily what it's doing, okay? Then that will, afterwards, take us to the stage where the dantian needs to turn on to activate the qi, the key in the ignition. The dantian must consolidate. If the body doesn't conduct and you're not dropping your center, then the dantian will not activate. It won't even consolidate. There'll be nothing there. There'll be nothing there at all. So it must turn on and it must consolidate. So to do this, we stretch and separate the mobilizers and the stabilizers. We make the body conductive to like a drum skin, like they say. And then we release the chest, release the sternum, so this can empty down. Yeah? Easy enough with me so far? This is what they call hollowing or rounding the chest. We don't hollow around the chest by curving it. That's incorrect. The hollowness is inside, it's down, so that the qi can descend. If you are curving your chest, you are holding your qi up. I'm sorry, you are holding your qi up. When I sit the shoulders properly, the qi will descend. Trust me on that. Tai Chi as well. You will never sink the qi if you round the chest physically. As a habit, I can categorically state you want to take it away. If you curve the chest, you will shorten all the muscles on the front, and that's what I'm seeing on some of your postures. This will be short. This will lock and sit the scapula into a locked place and pull your head forward. The shoulders must sit here. In the classics, when they talked about rounding the chest, round is a symbol for empty, That is what it is a symbol for. So round means to empty the chest. We empty the chest by releasing the sternum so that it stretches the ribs and descends the qi inside the torso. If I round the chest, the qi will stay up. It will stay caught. That's why descending the qi has become a quite sought after skill in arts like Tai Chi. So how do we descend the qi? How do we descend the qi? How do we descend the qi? Well, for a start, don't physically curve your chest because you will hold it up. It's like taking a container and doing that and expecting the qi, the water to move through it, right? It's not going to, it needs to upright so that we can descend inside. Odd analogy, I know. So, that must descend. Your spine must be open. Obviously, We don't want a closed spine, do we? That doesn't sound awesome, does it? We want space between the vertebra. So do not physically straighten your spine. Do not physically straighten your spine. Your spine is supposed to have an S shape. Have you noticed? It's designed to structurally within your body. So there is a stage where your spine will become more straight. That's true. It will start to straighten a little to a certain degree because of the way that the tissues are reshaping themselves. It will pull and it will gradually do it. But your spine will start to become straighter over a period of about 3 or 4 years because your body will reshape. But it never becomes washboard flat. So none of those practices where you put your back on a wall and try to sort of straighten it 100% and then kind of walk away like that. Don't do any of that. It straightens because we drop, it straightens a little bit to a certain degree because we drop the pelvis away from the occipits. And when we drop the pelvis away from the occipits, that sets up the stretch through your back and your torso, and that stretch creates a stressor that starts to reorganize the pelvis. Does that make sense with me so far? I know you do. You've been with me for years. We're on about so it must stretch to stretch everything out. Hope you do. You've been here bloody 10 years. Yeah, so I drop the pelvis away and it starts to reorganize the body according to that stress, right? So, okay with this? Okay with this? All right, yeah. Just trying to catch everyone up, you know. Honestly, I started Qigong very young. And the first few years, I liked it, you know, it was right, but I preferred martial arts. And one of the main reasons, it wasn't because I was particularly violent, that was just a byproduct of being an asshole. It was mainly because essentially what I was finding was I wasn't getting much from Qigong because the people who were loving it were the ones who wanted to relax. Now when you're a kid, you're not that fussed on relaxation, really. I mean, it's not very, what do you want to relax for if you haven't had a mortgage and bills and fucking pets and kids and whatever? So I hadn't really hit that stage. So what I was doing was I was reading about, all right, that's supposed to happen in Qigong from the texts and the stories and the books and the jumping over houses and all that kind of stuff. And what I was getting was relax, and it wasn't really doing anything. So it was only when I got a little bit further and someone showed me how to change the body that, oh, hang on, fucking hell, there's something that actually happens here. There's a reaction that is quite strong and it can change the body, and it's a whole system and it's quite profound. I mean, relaxation can be profound for some, but you know what I mean? I wanted more. I want this thing to move. So, how am I going to draw this? Excuse my artwork. I apologize. Leg bones. It's definitely what leg bones look like, right? Isn't it? I don't know. No idea. Pelvis. Tailbone on the back and lumbar. All right, it's not awesome, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Essentially, the pelvis must stretch away from the occipits, and this is the hook I'm talking about. Serial killer hook, yeah? Under the occipits. Someone's done you in and stuck you in their sort of pantry or something like that for later. The occipits have to attach here, and then I drop the pelvis away from the occipits to stretch the spine. Right? Don't stretch up. Don't stretch up. Stretch up. Don't stretch up. If you're a teacher, stop telling your students to stretch up. Because if they stretch up, they are pushing their muscles up, so they're locking the muscles, right? Whereas if I hook the occipits, which sounds weird, but you just kind of hook them in space. The body seems to be able to do it. And then I drop the pelvis down, you will stretch under the action of release and the spine will lengthen to a far greater degree. And that is how your knees bend. I release the pelvis, go into the quiet, and the knees will bend as a byproduct of stretching the pelvis away from the occipits to open the spine. Can you see the logic? Why we stretch down, right? I can release to stretch rather than add to stretch. Now, here's your next problem. I'm going fast, but we could be here a while, but I just want to cover all the basics. Is this okay for newer people? All right, sorry if it goes on a bit, but I'm just trying to help you with your bodies a bit. So essentially you've got this. This is your hip joint, isn't it? And the hip joint, it's so stuck, the hip joint, isn't it? The hip joints aren't great. They're not amazingly designed. I would have built them differently if they'd have asked me, but the hips are locked, right? Now, if your hips are held because of the muscular tension, which we all are at the beginning, your pelvis won't rotate within that space. It's like the pivot is held by your hips. It's held in space by the hip muscles. So when I drop my pelvis down, do you know what happens? Your tailbone will do that. It comes out. You drop it and you get like a duck butt, right? It sort of goes out the wrong way because the hips are tight and the lower back is a little bit tight. So consequently, as a shortcut, teachers were like, oh, tuck your tailbone. Tuck your tailbone. Tuck it under to straighten the spine. It was a shortcut because they were tired of looking at duck butt, in my opinion. So they wanted you to tuck. But the problem is when you tuck, you lock all the muscles on the front of the thigh and you switch the quad off. You literally switch the quad off. And you can feel it. If you sink into your quad and then tuck your tailbone under and then push your hands into the muscles of your quad, it's locked. So you are functioning purely from the hips, nothing more. Now the problem with moving from the hips is that it kind of ascends within the inside of the body. It forces the muscles and the diaphragm up, meaning the chi cannot descend. They're like diametrically opposed. If I tuck the tailbone and support the hips, you cannot release Tian 2. It's very, very strange. You can try it. Try and release Tian 2 without collapsing while pushing the hips forward and the tailbone. It ain't going to happen. It's like they're just sort of fighting each other on the inside of the body. So I have to switch off the hip muscles on the outside, around the trochanter, isn't it? Around there. That has to switch off and let go. Then when that lets go, then you can operate according to the qua, so the inside muscles can move. And also, arguably more important, is your pivot is no longer held. Your pivot is no longer held when the hip muscles are switched off. When you're operating according to the inside, the qua, then your pelvis is free. So then when I drop the pelvis away from the occipits, it will naturally rotate forward. Naturally, of its own accord, it will rotate forward. If the qua is not functioning, rotates back. Qua functioning, rotates forward. Can you see how that would happen? Just for the muscular supporting it, right? Martial arts, nice and easy, yeah? Because you do lots of, especially internal martial arts, because you do lots of sort of Mabu shapes and rotating the pelvis, right? And what they're trying to do is switch off those hip muscles, originally were, and kind of drop the pelvis into place. Qigong a little bit harder. We don't tend to use those postures so much. Instead, it's more about getting consciously into the right muscles, releasing the wrong ones and getting the right ones to switch on. Yeah, so a little bit harder, but we get it. It takes a little bit of time. Right. This will mean that, a little bit more. Rib cage. Okay, rib cage. Yeah. Pelvis. Something like that, isn't it? I don't know. Whatever. Rib cage and pelvis. When you drop the pelvis away from the ribs, those lines will stretch. They will stretch as well. They will elasticate between the pelvis and the rib cage. When they elasticate, now your body is able to pass chi up and down, up and down. It can conduct through this line. So I stretch everything and then I drop Tian 2 and it will conduct the chi down. Yeah? So it will now descend towards the abdomen. So errors that are going to stop it. Number one, if you are sat or putting your weight in your spine, that is going to stop it. So you can't lean backwards. And we've all seen the lean back jam jong, right? Lean back jam jong. You can't do that. So if you have short back muscles, which is quite a lot of people, isn't it? Short lower back muscles. We've all kind of pulled and twisted it or done something, haven't we? If you have short lower back muscles, you're going to have to make sure that you are stressing them by dropping the pelvis, because you're going to have to get those muscles longer again so the spine can open. So I have to take my body weight forward until the lower back is free. So your inclinations between 8 and 10 degrees forward, something like that. Cannot be upright, because if you're upright, you will close your spine. So you must be forwards, yeah? Remember, the incorrect instruction is stack the bones. Never stack the bones. The bones want to float apart, right? Why would you want to stack your bones? That means close the joints and send gravity through the joints. You want them open so they float, yeah? So I come forwards, yeah? Take the weight off the spine. That's error one. Error two, don't collapse the ribs towards the pelvis. Because if you collapse the ribs towards the pelvis, you get like a little burt around here, and then it's no longer stretching, right? And if it doesn't stretch inside, then you're not going to be able to conduct the chi up and down. So if you see all the collapsed structures in Qigong, it's incorrect. It's incorrect, the collapsed structures. The chi will not move through them. What will move through them? Fat That's about it really, fat and fluids. Yeah, so we want to essentially stretch it so it conducts, because the qi moves like an electrical current through conductive lines. That's what we want. With me so far? Yeah. So it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt your joints. It's going to hurt your muscles. It's going to be like, you know that thing where they grab your wrists and they go like that and you get the friction burn on your wrist that you do to each other at school. It's going to feel like that through the muscles as they start to separate. So there's going to be deep bruises and things pull in and stuff like that. That's normal. That's okay. That's fine. But not your joints. Not your joints. Okay, your joints mustn't hurt. Just that sort of deep bruising sensation is fine. Your calves are going to hurt like a motherfucker, excuse my language, if you're new. It's going to be very, very uncomfortable. Your calves especially, because they're very bound up. They're normally very, very bound up. Okay, last part. So for thunder, their word, the thing that arises through your body, the shaking, the vibration, you must open your feet. You must open your feet. Yongchuan means your whole foot, apart from your heel, doesn't it? Yeah, whole foot apart from your heel, really, in Qigong. Doesn't mean one tiny little acupuncture point, it means the whole foot. So those long bones, he's missing a toe, but I'm bored of drawing them, you know what I mean? There's the toes. I'm a fucking master, look at that, artwork. I'll sell it afterwards. So these bones must widen. They have to widen. You've got your old Ming Dynasty bound feet. Probably wasn't Ming Dynasty, I got no idea, but you know what I mean. You've got your bound feet, the Chinese bound feet, and they've got to open. They've got to open, especially if you've not been in a country we lived in sandals. They're going to be tight. Definitely, they're going to be tight. You've probably got those freaky little toe like I have, you know what I mean? But everything's got to stretch. So the reason we stretch it is because between here, the tissues between the long bones have to also stretch like the rest of the body so they can conduct the qi. So the qi can conduct through there. Now again, I know this is a little bit of a kind of concept for beginners because there's no literal substance that you don't bring it in like that. It doesn't work like this. It's more to do with lowering yourself into a magnetic field that surrounds the earth. But as a concept, it's easy to understand. So we'll stick with the concept rather than the truth. And the concept is we stretch all of those lines between the bones so that they can conduct the vibration force through it. Yeah. Until they are spread, Yongchuan is closed. And as I said, when I went to the Qigong masters, and they were masters, not just by name, by skill level as well, that was almost universally the thing. The feet are closed. People's feet are closed. Yongchuan is closed. How do you open it? Brute force and stupidity. No, not really. You release the mass to target that point. So you do not put your weight in your heels, because we're not trying to open the heel. If you put your weight in your heels, you'll collapse the spine. We're putting our weight in the front of the foot like an animal, like a cat, like a dog, you know, like over the front, to create a spring through the legs and to use our mass to open these tissues. For some people, it will burn like stink, because the tissues are very bound up inside their feet. So there's going to be a burning sensation rather than a bubbling sensation like they tell you. There's going to be a burning sensation between those bones as the tissues rip, for want of a better word. They've got to tear open so they can slide. I'm not going to soft soap it. It's going to hurt for a lot of you. And we target all of the mass that we're dropping from the body down towards this point to open it. This means that the tissues from the feet, okay, stretch. They're stretched, right, under your mass. And that's going to stretch all the way up the legs. And that reminds me of a diagram you sometimes see, right? The winding line, yeah? Because it's not to do with how we turn our body, and it's not to do with the qi. It's because all those tissues need to pull and stretch as a relationship to those feet opening up. When it opens up, Jian, okay, thunder. What's the other word for that trigram? Have you seen? Shaking, arousing, stimulating. It's talking about movement, stuff that generates something within the body, right? Something in life, the rouser, the shaker. Here comes the vibration force. Up through the legs, because now it conducts through the tissues. So what's going to happen? You're going to vibrate. Not muscular twitching, vibration. Muscular twitching is very different. It's about 3 or 4 times a second. Vibration force is between 7 and 8 times a second. You can see the difference. It's a particular frequency as it goes through that conductive line. As it shakes up through that line, it unravels the nerves and opens the channels in the body and opens the channels in the legs. Yeah, so this is why your body is kind of going through stuff. When it gets up to the dantian or it shakes in the abdomen, then the dantian will activate as well. Yeah, so then this will start to move and the chi can mobilize on the inside. Do you understand that? We then do a similar thing with the arms. We stretch the palms, don't we? The same as this really, but we stretch the tissues and that stretch comes back up through the arms until it gets into the armpits. Now all of these things we're doing are then stressing the elastic, stressing the connective tissue, stressing the wetsuit, because under the action of stress it's going to change. See, it's the opposite of what people think. What do? We create as much stress as we can. We just do it in the right regions of the body. We don't do it in the wrong regions of the body. We do it in the right regions of the body so that everything elasticates and ties together. Body. Right, so what you'll see drawn, what do they draw, okay, with regards to channels in the body? Have you ever seen it drawn for Qigong? It's not the same as acupuncture. That's only in modern books. Modern books, they incorporate acupuncture channels, don't they? They're not quite right. Not for this. What they do is they draw this. Have you seen that drawing for the channels before? Yeah, they draw it like this. They don't draw lung channel, large intestine channel, da 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 da. Classically, it's just those lines through the body. Why? Because those are the main lines of stretch that we're trying to activate, right? Like through the body by dropping the pelvis away from the head to elasticate the body, and then from the feet to connect in at the dantian or the kwa, and then from the arms via the armpit into the central column, right? So then people are trying to say, oh, this is the chongmai. And I've seen a couple of authors try to say, oh, it's the chongmai or something. Kind of, it's kind of true. But really what we're doing is these are the elastic tissues that are pulling. It's the lines of connection from the hands to the feet, the mountain and the thunder. And then the vibration force from the dantian will move along those lines and mobilize the qi. So the first kind of qi that moves, the nei qi, if you want, that moves through the body is going to then open up things that are stopping this process from happening. So what are you going to do? You're going to vibrate, you're going to shake, or you're going to do weird things with your arms. Quite often it's going to move around a little bit. And the reason it's going to move around is as that qi conducts along those lines, it stimulates any blockages in the nerves. That's what's moving. So if your nerves are bound up, then they're going to kick. And we all have that somewhere. Like all of us have some bound up nerves, I would assume, like somewhere in the body, because we've all had a life. So it's going to, they're going to get stimulated and they're going to move. This is why you get the stretches and the twitches and things like that. And this is going to start to open up the body. At this stage, we have activation. Now the qi is activated and it is starting to move. You with me on that? Follow me there? Yeah? So one thing that caused some confusion, I saw some people look confused at the beginning when I was talking, and I get it, I can see why it's confusing. I said don't relax. Like don't relax. Yeah, so last thing I wanted to explain to you. Relax your mind, totally, that's cool, but don't relax your body at the beginning. Because when you relax, whatever inherent pattern you have in your body is going to pop up. This is why if you teach a Qigong class and someone's leaning to the left, because people have got weird postures, you stand them up, and then when they relax, they go back into their shape, right? And then you stand them up, and then they relax, they go back into their shape. Whatever their shape is, they go back into their shape. Because when you relax, the short muscles are going to show themselves up. So what I have to do is open and stretch everything. Because when I stretch, that's going to reprogram the body shape, reprogram the muscle memory, reprogram the tissue memory, so that then everything is open. Then when it's open, I've done the hard work of the foundations, then you can relax. Because when you relax the body, you will be held by the correct shape. And when you are now held by the correct shape, then you can just focus on the process of release. So for a long time, your body is going to be quite taut, is the word, because you're pulling the incorrect shapes out of your body, okay, to line it up properly. Does that make sense? You understand that, right? Same as yoga, yeah? You don't do yoga totally soft at the beginning, do you? First time you try and do bloody yoga, the teacher says relax, you do down dog, and it's like, oh fuck, it's like someone's kicked me right in the spine, you know, because everything is pulling. You've got to work open that body. And it's the same with Qigong. It's no different. You have to elasticate and pull everything to get it to open up, yeah, to create space. A little bit more. You take more? Take a tiny bit more? You're right, and you a little bit more. If you want to switch off, honestly, I know some of you are more than familiar with this. I just want to catch everyone up. Dantian, abdominal space, diaphragm. Remember at the beginning, for beginners, Dantian is like this. It's kind of naff. It's just dispersed, basically, because your Dantian doesn't really serve a purpose after you're about 10 or 11 years old, maybe 12. It's kind of done. You don't need your Dantian for anything else after that. It's kind of useless, unless you're a cultivator. If you're a cultivator, that's different, because we want to return to the state of a child to regather that field in the abdomen. But if you're a average Joe or whatever, then you don't really require it. So therefore, naturally, there's a dispersal of the organizing field as you grow up, because you only needed the Dantian as a kid to grow. That was it. You needed it for all that amazing, huge reserve of energy you needed to gain 6 foot so you don't remain tiny for the rest of your life. But once you've done that process, the Dantian goes, it just kind of disperses, it's done. So we wish to regather it. So to regather it, we have reverse breathing. Reverse breathing. To draw it in. You can't see the right side. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? You can't read my writing anyway, to be honest, Robert, but there you go. Oh, it's a different. Can you switch the... Oh, people's asking the same. Is that the whiteboard? Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I can't see myself on the screen. I can only see you guys. Is that on the screen? Oh, great. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm looking at you, not me. I get bored. Feel weird looking at myself for hours and hours. So I just get rid of me. I'll look at you, and I know what I look like. I'll look at you instead. So we use reverse breathing to draw everything in. That's what reverse breathing is for. Yeah, to draw everything in. But remember, for reverse breathing, most of you are familiar with this, I don't close the abdomen from the outside. Don't close the abdomen from the outside. Because as soon as I close the abdominal wall, you will send the chi up. It will go up. Yeah, it will go up into the spine and up into your chest, and you'll get quite hyper because you're stimulating the nervous system. You're going into fight or flight ultimately. That's why a lot of systems will use kind of forced, fast reverse breathing to deliberately do that, right? To stimulate the nerves. But we don't want that. So what we do is we close from inside. Close from inside. So remember, the inner abdominal cavity must close. The inner abdominal sac must close as you breathe in. It means the outside of your body, the abdominal wall, hardly moves. I can hardly see it. It sort of moves a tiny little bit. Not sure if you're reverse breathing or if you're breathing at all. Start to get a little bit concerned when there's a class of people doing that in case you've all died. But we want the inside sac to draw in. Yeah. And when you draw the inside sac in, the diaphragm will descend, the chi will stay down, and you'll start to build the outside field of the dantian, of the shell. Okay, it will start to build. The container will reform. The bucket that we put the water in starts to reform inside the abdomen like you had as a kid. We keep going until it's strong enough to grip, so that it actually physically changes and pulls on the inside of your body. And we assist it with dantian gong. So there's exercises where you hold lao gong either side, move it around. When lao gong is opened enough, then what will happen is the chi will reach your hands, and then that will start to grip the dantian. So then when I turn the hands, it's like a tight sphere, if you've not felt it, rolling around inside. And really what it is, it's the fascial connections underneath your diaphragm, in front of the lumbar, on the base of the pelvis, and behind the abdominal wall, just kind of pulling on each other as I turn that chi. So it'll feel quite tight and constricted at first. When you've got to that stage, then I can use the hands to make the exercises work, right? So if you look at how a Qigong system like this one, okay, this Qigong system for simplicity's sake works, is I'm essentially, oh, one second. I forgot there's 2 cameras. I need to change the other one as well, don't I? So what I'm doing is I'm essentially using the Wu Ji posture, the static posture, to open up the body, open up the feet, open up the hands, stretch the body and change it till I can get to a stage where I'm able to use the hands to control the inside of the body. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Once I got the hands to control the inside of the body, I'm laughing, I'm golden, I'm off, because essentially then what I can do is I can start to use my hands to govern and pull the chi, like when I'm trying to move it through the spine. But at first, when you're trying to hold the chi, you can't grasp it. It's like trying to grab a cloud. So we have to get it thick by consolidating the dantian, yeah, and then I can move it through the body. So as I said, martial arts is generally center to control the hands. The center of your body controls the limbs, not always, but mostly. Qigong is the other way around. Your hands control the inside of the body. I'm always surprised when I see people in Qigong say, move from your center. Like, why? You're not trying to hit anybody. You don't need any physical power, so why bother? You're trying to move the chi inside, so you may as well use your hands. Like, it's okay. Like, no problem. Your hands work. So we use the hands to control the chi on the inside. That's what we're trying to do. Do you understand that? Like a reverse of martial arts. Because you're not trying to hit anyone with it, so why do you need the connective power? We're only trying to build the dantian and move these things on the inside. So we use our hands. So all Qigong postures, classical ones, exercises, there's modern ones that have changed it, of course, they've deviated, but all classical postures would have been the hands moving to control the chi inside. That's what they're doing. The reason we do that is so you can switch off your mind. So your mind can just pay attention to what's going on, because your attention fuels whatever process you're doing. So if I move my chi up and down, okay, it's quite light, but if I'm slower than that, but if I pay attention to the inside of the body, then it becomes faster, faster, faster. It grows, it thickens. It's like your attention waters that process that's happening on the inside. It's why you cannot visualize or imagine, because then your mind is doing something else. Your mind is not still, your mind is not empty, your mind is not wu wei, it's not non-governing. It's doing something. Your mind should do nothing, just pay attention. Your hands do something. They are doing the work. The posture is doing the work. Nor your mind. No imagining lotus flowers, no lights, no unicorns. Just listen. Ting. Listen inside. Use your hands to move the chi. That's basically it. Is that easy enough? So that's the difference with, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with the relaxing stuff. Totally, I get it. Like, I get it. If you stressed out, need to chill, that's all cool. That's brilliant. But the alchemical way of working, which is definitely the classical way of working, is a little bit harder work, because we want to change the body to make it more efficient for what we want to do. That's what we want to do. So all of this stuff you hear about, like non-effort, I'm afraid that's later. And actually, it's a lie. I've never found any stage that doesn't feel like a bloody nightmare to do, to be perfectly honest. The mind can relax, but there's always some kind of stressor going on in the body, because ultimately we want change, and it's only stress that changes the body. So here, when this is all activated, you might, if you're newer, you'll have to do a fair bit of that, because then the postures are really easy to make work, because this mechanic is in every posture. So then what I do is I show you 8 postures, one for each trigram, right? One for each gua. I won't show you 64, that'd be a nightmare. We do 8 key postures for the gua. When you hold the pattern, all it does is it stretches different conductive lines, and the result is the chi will move differently inside the body. But until the dantian is active and the vibration force is there, the postures are going to feel very similar. They're not going to be differentiated very much. Like, the body can't tell the difference between them, because there's no conductors. But once the conductors are there, it's easy. I make the new shape, the chi moves in a different pattern, I got eight hexagrams, yeah? It's like the more and more you open up and activate the body, the more differentiated the exercises will feel, and then you'll know very differently, you know very clearly what they're for. So that's why I did that Gong class, nice and basic, just to, this is like Qigong 101, yeah? This is where, to me, I start all the beginners. Anyone who's trained with me for a few years in person know this is where I start beginners, really, isn't it? This is day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Goes on for quite a while, just working and working the body. So when I teach, it's a little different from the academy syllabus, which is aimed, also has this in it, but it's just coming out from a different angle. But when I teach in person, or the other teachers in Lotus and Gong teach in person, Basically the process is open the body, stretch the body, reshape the body, sink the Qi. Open the body, stretch the body, reshape the body, sink the Qi, over and over again till the dantian is activated and the Qi is vibrating through the body. This is basically what we do to get the fuel in the engine before you learn loads of exercises, generally. Does that catch you up a bit, if you're a bit newer? Does that catch you up? And of course all teachers will work differently, but this is essentially how I work, or the other people in Lotus and Qigong. This is what we're doing, right? So it was a bit speedy, I know, I missed out various details, but hopefully that's a bit of an overview. And of course, if you've heard this, loads of you in the Academy, just go and look at the Foundations program in there, rewatch it if you haven't seen it, and you'll see what I'm talking. You'll see now, with this explanation, if you didn't know it before, why I'm shaping your body like that. As you go through, like click on the video for the pelvis, you'll see why and how we work it. There's a rationale behind my insanity, I think.